Good afternoon. Happy, beautiful Sunday to everybody. Welcome to Eating the Elephant, where we talk about Hurricane Michael recovery, and we talk about eating the elephant that is this recovery in small bites. We try to break it up into bite-sized pieces for you, answer a few questions each week, and I'd like to start this week by giving only a reference that Southern folks would understand. If you go to Alabama, the greeting that is universal is either going to be Roll Tide, or, well, I can't say the tiger thing, I just can't. But regardless, you're either going to be a Bama fan or you're going to be an Auburn fan, and there's nobody in between. And the universal greeting, of course, relates to one of those two. I want to start with that because, of course, Pat, the proper answer is Go Noles, of course. But I want to say that to introduce an idea that it occurred to me today when we were at lunch. The first question I asked to somebody that I hadn't seen in quite some time was, so where are you stuck? And I think that's kind of where most of us are. Most of us are stuck somewhere. Some of us are more stuck than others. We're stuck, frankly, at my house in a pretty good place. Last week was drywall week, and this coming week is probably going to be paint week, I think, according to my wife. So we're making progress. They're sharing good. So while most of us are making progress, some of us are making progress much more quickly than others, and some, frankly, are stuck in the mud and not making progress at all. So I think what you need to determine is where are you stuck? What is keeping you down? Another question, a good question, as Pat points out, is how are you doing really? When you ask somebody how are you doing, frankly, it's a little bit of a trite question. I would suggest that we could all do better with a little closer listening to the answer to that question. Most of the answer I get to that question when I ask people is nonverbal. You get either a slump in the shoulders or an eye roll, perhaps, and some people kind of lean into it. And, I got soffit this week, or I settled with my insurance company, or we're getting some positive moves too. But you're going to have to pay closer attention. But for yourself and your approach to this storm and this recovery, you need to really consider where you're stuck, if you are stuck. And if you're making progress, even if it's slow, think of the next thing in line that has to fall. I've talked before in this series about dominoes falling, and people worrying about dominoes at the end of the line when they should be worrying about the domino in front of them that has to fall first. And I've noticed that some people are getting locked up again, and they're worrying about all of the dominoes at once. And I think that's a recipe for high stress, high anxiety. So what I would say is focus on the problem. Focus on where you're stuck. Are you stuck with a supplement problem with your insurance company? That requires a very different solution than if you're stuck waiting on a contractor to finish, or waiting on a contractor that maybe is not treating you well. If a public adjuster has got you stuck, that's going to require a different problem and a different solution. And it's going to require you attacking a different part and maybe bringing in a different set of resources, maybe resources you used one time before, and you sort of put those resources back on the shelf, and now you need to take those off the shelf again and use them once again. You may have talked to somebody, for instance, at the Department of Financial Services in Tallahassee 3 months ago, 4 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Maybe it's time to go back to that well. It just really depends on where you're stuck. So give some real thought this week to where are you stuck. If you're not stuck at all, if your gears are in motion and you're moving, fantastic for you. Then I would just say get out of the way of the train and let it keep rolling. Chances are you have done what is needed. Number one, you've gotten good help, and number two, you've advocated for yourself. I got to tell you, I still think that is the number one difference between people that are having a good result and people that are having a poor result, is people that are being proactive, advocating for themselves, and people that are being reactive and sort of letting the system do to them whatever it's going to do to them. So again, my advice, always be proactive. There are a couple of newsworthy events that have happened that I think we should pay some attention to. Number one, if you live in Lynn Haven like I do, EPCI has been fired by Lynn Haven, essentially. They've, I guess, agreed to part ways. For those of you unfamiliar, EPCI was the contractor that the city of Lynn Haven and actually several other municipalities around town have they had them doing the roof inspections and things such as that, and they were feeling like they weren't getting the results that they should. There was lots of talk about people maybe doing roof inspections without getting on roofs, things like that. I will tell you, here at our house at Hacienda Hutt, we had a very good experience. Things went as they should. We actually did not pass our first roof inspection, but EPCI picked it up, so did the roofer. The roofer came back and fixed it without so much as a comment, and things worked the way they were supposed to work. So even with a glitch, things can go smoothly. I don't know all of the politics and the situation behind the EPCI split with Lynn Haven, but you need to be aware, because you need to be aware that for a period of time in Lynn Haven, there's going to be a transition to a new contractor, and there's probably going to be some slowdown. There may be some additional delays that you haven't expected, so plan for extra time. When you're trying to get a roof checked on, or you need some other sort of inspection, you need to make sure that you plan for some extra time. I know nothing happens in linear time anymore. It's to use the Doctor Who analogy again, it's this timey-wimey stuff. But what I would say is you're just going to have to, for a little while anyway, those of you in Lynn Haven are going to have to use a little more extra patience. You're going to have to plan ahead just a little bit further. I want to thank those of you that came to the Fraud and Abuse Town Hall that was held out at St. Dominic's on Saturday. I want to make sure I get this name right. The Florida Property Casualty Insurance Fraud and Abuse Task Force, I think is what it's called. I may have butchered the name. But essentially, it's a group of people from the industry, from insurance companies, from citizens, from law enforcement, from fraud investigative units, public adjusters. There's a number of people that volunteer their time on this task force, and I had not met any of them before, and I was really pleased to see so many of them show up in an effort to help our community. And I particularly like seeing guys with guns and badges at events like that, because I know if you've got a gun and a badge, you have enforcement power, and that's what we need right now, is enforcement power to slow down and arrest, literally, fraud and abuse that's going on in our community. If we can get the bad players off the field that much more quickly, we can have the good players on the field moving the ball down toward the end zone, and I think that's definitely what we need. There was a relatively short window of time to promote that event, and there wasn't much budget for it, evidently. So I think most of the promotion of it consisted of me throwing a few Facebook posts out there. So what I would like to say is there will be another one, it looks like, because it was very well attended, very successful, and I think the people both on the panel and the people in the audience got a lot of good information. And I would absolutely, I would say without question, there's probably going to be another one. Where I'm going to sort of vote for it and where I'm going to sort of push these guys if I can is to come back in about a month, give everybody plenty of time to plan for it. It should be on a Saturday again, is my guess, and you'll have a chance to come sit with people that enforce the rules, and you can talk to them about how to recognize fraud, what can be done about fraud, and what part of the government food chain you can plug into, and what resources you can rely on in order to get your problem solved. I have some resources that I uncovered there that I didn't really know about, and I'll try to post those on our Facebook page, so keep a lookout for that. Pat says, I've asked the insurance company for a line item report of what they say they've paid, and after 2 weeks they're still stalling. My suggestion would immediately, of course, be to escalate that. And I'm going to stay with the plan that I have given you guys since the very beginning, which was educate, which you've all done, advocate, which is working on your own behalf. Pat's been very effective at that with her adjuster. I've talked with her a number of times. Escalate, meaning get a supervisor, and mediate, getting the Department of Financial Services involved. And as Pat asked this question, I would go back to that very same advice. Get to someone further up the food chain, get to a supervisor, and if that doesn't work, then get someone from the Department of Financial Services involved. Because if that's data that's critical to you, you need to know what you're being paid for, you need to know what the cost of items are, and you need to be able to reconcile what's been paid to you with what you're paying out. I'm just now getting to some of that process here at our house. I've begun collecting all of my information, and very soon, hopefully once the painting is done, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to put money in on one side and money out on the other and make sure those numbers match. And if they don't, I'm going to go back to my insurance company and ask for more money. I'm going to come back to Cindy's question in just a minute, but I wanted to talk about public adjusters moving to attorneys, because we did hear about this Saturday quite a bit, and I've mentioned it before. we're at the point in the process where several public adjusters are moving files and cases to attorneys for action because either they're not getting the kind of response they need and they think that's the good tactical move on their part. In some cases, we've heard that public adjusters are simply leaving town and doing what's known as a file dump. They're just handing all their files to an attorney firm and letting them handle them from there, and they're going back to wherever they are. Mostly in South Florida is where most of these public adjusters are from. So whichever that situation is, you need to be aware of a couple things. Number one, if you're handed off from a public adjuster to an attorney, you should know why. You should ask the question, why now? Why is this a good idea? Is this the right move for me? Or is it not the right move for me? You also need to be aware that that attorney is not really engaged on your behalf until you sign on. You engage that attorney. The public adjuster simply makes a referral. It's a kind of a handoff, but that attorney does not work for you, and you're not obligated to that attorney until you obligate yourself. So you may wish to go with the attorney that's been recommended to you. You may not. You may have someone else in mind. You may have heard of someone else that you would prefer to deal with. Maybe they're local, or maybe they're a specialist in this area, or maybe you've heard something that's unflattering about the attorney firm that you're being referred to, and if that's the case, you certainly don't have to go with them. You have to remember, I've said this a million times, I'm going to repeat it over and over again. It's your home, it is your claim, it is your decision who you hire to put at your home. Okay? So that goes for being referred to an attorney as well. I want to come back to Cindy's question that she didn't understand on roof inspections. Do you hire someone or do they come out from the city? She's in Panama City in this case. Frankly, both, in my opinion. When a permit is pulled, particularly on a roof, that permit needs to be closed, and the way that permit is closed is by securing an inspection from the city. When the roofer finishes their job, they're supposed to call they're supposed to be in touch with the building department. The building department sends out an inspector, and when that inspector's finished, they close that permit, and it's either passed or it's failed. If it's passed the inspection, then you're set to go. And if it fails the inspection, there should be some notice of what the deficiency is, and then the roofer needs to come out and fix that deficiency, and then you can feel more comfortable paying them at the end of the day. When I said both, though, I think it's also important, and I've said this before, you can go back over some of the previous episodes, you should also hire your own inspector. It's a very inexpensive way to get peace of mind and to get somebody that you know is absolutely in your corner for a fee, usually $75 or $100, and they'll inspect your roof. They may inspect the rest of your house. As part of this process, they may give you, you may ask them to provide you with a new wind mitigation form. I don't want to belabor this point because I've talked about it many times before, and if you've got specific questions, by all means, give me a shout at the office. I wanted to say something that links into something I've said the last couple of episodes. I've talked about making changes prior to your renewal. I've talked about shopping, talking to a new agent, talking to a new insurance company if you were unhappy with your results after Hurricane Michael. What I would like to say is you've got to watch your timing. Think about it. There are most folks in town that have home insurance. The bill probably goes to your lender instead of to your home. And probably what happens is every single year the lender pays it and you just keep moving on and you pay your premium as part of your escrow account every single year without paying much attention to it. Well, this is a good time to pay attention. What you need to do is be in touch with your lender. If you know that you're dissatisfied and don't want to renew with your current insurance carrier, call your lender now, let them know that you have no intention of renewing and they are not, give them specific instructions not to pay the renewal bill that they receive from your current insurance company. But then it is incumbent upon you to go out and do your homework, find a new agent, find a new insurance company, and make sure that you get that information to your lender in plenty of time, ideally 2, 3, 4 weeks before the renewal. That may not be possible in some cases. It gets a little itchy because if we do a quote for someone, if it's more than a month out, the insurance company is not going to guarantee that premium and guarantee that number. It's possible, fairly unlikely, but it's possible they could have a rate change in that 30-day period and they'd have to do things over again. However, what I would say is if you, like I keep talking to you about having conversations and ongoing communication with your adjuster, you should do the same thing with your lender. It's a little tougher with your lender because you're going to call an 800 number and get whoever picks up the phone, but they're going to make notes in your file. And what you should be able to do is have a reasonable conversation with them and explain to them you're very unhappy. It's not been the experience you expected with your insurance, and you're going to make a change, and that you need to stay in touch with them. But again, you need to make sure you get them their information in plenty of time to pay the new premium with the new insurance company. I'm going to close a little bit early today, and I'd like to say that I think what we're going to do with this particular thing with eating the elephant is we're going to start winding it down, probably in the next couple of weeks. And the reason I say that is not because there's not issues that we still have to address, but there's not an awful lot of new things that we need to address. A lot of what is coming up has been here before. It's sort of things are being recycled now. And so what I think we're probably going to do in the next couple of weeks is we're going to begin to wind this down. So if you have things you want addressed on eating the elephant, then please let us know as soon as you can. You can reach out via Facebook, direct message. You can post something on our Facebook page. You can email me at my office, trey@huttinsurance.com, and I'll be glad to address your questions. And what we're going to do is transition to something called the insurance pilot, and it's going to be a little bit more general. We're not going to focus exclusively on hurricane issues. We're going to talk about insurance issues in general, so that when you go into any insurance situation, any insurance claim, moving forward, you're going to be better informed, and hopefully you will have been able to make some more informed choices about your coverage, about your insurance company, about your costs. And then if you do have a claim, whatever kind of claim that is, from an auto claim to another hurricane claim, you'll be better prepared and you'll be better educated and you'll know what to do. And you will not feel that sense of loss and confusion that you probably did right after the hurricane. I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoy this wonderful weather, and we'll see you on Wednesday.